Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Elena here. Oh, don't mind my background. I bet it's all jacked up and whatnot. But today we'll be reacting to Shrek theories. We'll be reacting to Shrek theories. There's this YouTuber, FlopGuy, and he literally have crazy ass ideas. And well, I think he's explaining because I didn't watch it before, so he's explaining every theory that might be true in the Shrek universe. The description, it says, from Princess Fiona being a cannibal, Donkey is the donkey from Pinocchio, Shrek's parents abandoning him, Puss wiping out the ogres, and more. We're going to get started. Is my Bluetooth connected? Yes, it is.
Fiona is a cannibal. This theory takes one of the darker implications in Shrek and pushes it into genuinely disturbing territory. Throughout the movie, the idea that ogres eat people is mostly treated like a joke, something Shrek leans into just to scare villagers away. But Fiona's situation is very different. She wasn't just living alone, she was trapped, locked in a tower since childhood, guarded by a fire-breathing dragon with no clear explanation of how she survived for years. And when Shrek finally arrives, what do we actually see? Fiona, the dragon, and a tower filled with the remains of fallen knights. Now sure, the obvious answer is that the dragon killed them. But this theory asks a darker follow-up. What happened after? Food had to come from somewhere. And in extreme survival situations, even in real life, humans have resorted to unthinkable things. The theory suggests that during her ogre transformations at night, Fiona may have experienced intense hunger, pushing her into cannibalism just to stay alive. It's unsettling, but it does explain something the movie never bothers to: how she sustained herself for that long with zero visible supplies. And what makes it even creepier is how cleanly Fiona moves on afterward. Once she escapes, there's no mention of survival struggles, no trauma explored, nothing. It's like that entire chapter of her life is buried, which, if this theory is even partially true, might be exactly what she wants. Donkey is from Pinocchio. This theory connects two classic fairy tales in a way that actually makes a lot of sense, and gives Donkey a much darker backstory than the movies ever admit. In Shrek, Donkey casually mentions that he can talk because of some magic, but he never explains it, and the way he brushes past it, it feels intentional, like it's something he doesn't want to revisit. Even Shrek is surprised that a donkey can talk, which tells us this isn't normal even in a fairy tale world. Now jump to Pinocchio. In that story, a group of boys are lured into skipping responsibilities and end up being magically transformed into donkeys on Pleasure Island. It's one of the darkest scenes in any Disney film. Kids crying, calling for their parents, slowly losing their humanity. But here's the key detail: some of them can still talk, at least temporarily. So what if Donkey is one of those boys? It would explain everything: why he can talk, why it's rare, and why he avoids the topic completely. If Donkey remembers even fragments of being human, then his constant humor and non-stop talking might not just be comic relief, it could be a coping mechanism. Because if this theory is true, Donkey isn't just a funny sidekick. He's a kid who got trapped in a curse and never found his way back. Shrek's parents abandoned him. This theory reframes Shrek not as a lone ogre by nature, but one who was made that way. In Shrek Forever After, we get a glimpse of an alternate reality where Shrek was never born. And what stands out immediately is that ogres aren't rare at all. There's an entire group of them, led by Fiona, living like hardened warriors and actively fighting back against Rumpelstiltskin's rule. That detail alone changes everything, because in the main timeline, Shrek acts like he's the only ogre around. He lives isolated in a swamp, completely disconnected from any kind of family or community. But this alternate reality suggests that ogres do have societies, meaning Shrek didn't just end up alone by coincidence. He was separated, and when you compare him to the other ogres, it gets even more interesting. They're aggressive, battle-ready, and united. Shrek, he avoids conflict whenever he can. He uses intimidation as a defense mechanism, not as a way of life. He doesn't fit the mold. So the theory goes, what if Shrek was rejected as a child? If he didn't act like a proper ogre, less violent, more emotional, more human? It's possible his parents saw him as weak or different, and instead of raising him, they abandoned him, leaving him to grow up alone in the swamp. It would explain why Shrek is so defensive, why he pushes people away before they can reject him, and why the idea of being accepted by Fiona, by Donkey, hits so hard. Because if this is true, Shrek wasn't born a loner.
I
He was
said
left to
that.
become one. Dragon is a cursed princess. This theory flips one of the strangest characters in Shrek into something way more tragic. And honestly, it kind of fits. At first glance, the dragon is just the obstacle guarding Fiona's tower. But look closer, and her
That makes
behavior
sense
feels
too. I can
different.
see
She's
it.
emotional, expressive, even romantic. She falls in love with Donkey, builds a family, and later becomes part of Shrek's inner circle. That's a very human-like behavior. Now think about the storybook at the start of the film. It tells the tale of a cursed princess locked in a tower. But the visuals don't always line up perfectly with Princess Fiona. Instead, the film keeps cutting back to the dragon during these moments, almost like it's quietly hinting at something else. So what if the dragon was the original princess? The idea is that she was cursed, possibly transformed into a dragon, and left trapped in the tower long before Fiona arrived. Instead of being a guard, she was another victim. That would explain why she doesn't just attack blindly. She reacts, she feels, she connects. And here's where it gets darker. Unlike Fiona, who eventually breaks her curse by finding love, the dragon never turns back. The theory suggests her curse became permanent, either because no one came for her or because she eventually accepted her life as a dragon, which makes her story less of a side gag and more of a forgotten fairy tale with no happy ending. Puss wiped out all the ogres. This is easily one of the darkest theories in the entire Shrek universe, and it turns Puss in Boots from a charming rogue into something way more dangerous. When Puss is introduced in Shrek 2, he's not a hero, he's a hired assassin sent to kill Shrek, and the movie makes it clear this isn't unusual for him. Fighting, killing, taking contracts, that's his past. Now connect that to another mystery. Where are all the ogres? As we saw in Shrek Forever After, ogres aren't supposed to be extinct. There are entire groups of them. But in the main timeline, Shrek is completely alone. No family, no tribe, and no community. Humans clearly fear ogres, but they're not strong enough to wipe them out on their own. This theory suggests they didn't have to, because they had Puss, a master swordsman, fast, precise, and smart enough to outmaneuver someone as strong as Shrek. Puss could have been the perfect weapon. If he was hired to hunt ogres, he might have systematically taken them down one by one and eventually leaving Shrek as the last. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Puss doesn't tell Shrek anything about his past. He jokes, he flirts, he plays the hero, but there's a clear gap in his history. If this theory is true, it's not just a secret, it's a betrayal that would destroy everything between them, because that would mean Shrek's closest friend is the
They're
reason he
ahead.
ended up alone. Fairy Godmother created the evil queen. This theory turns one of the most polished villains in Shrek 2 into the hidden architect behind another classic fairy tale villain. Fairy Godmother isn't just granting wishes, she's running a system. Every spell, every potion, every happy ending is carefully controlled to maintain her version of perfection in Far, Far Away. And most importantly, it always benefits her. Now think about the wider fairy tale
I didn't
world.
like the Puss in
Characters
Boots
like
one.
Snow White exist in this universe, which means the evil queen likely does too. And if everyone goes to the fairy godmother for help at some point, then both of them probably did. Here's where it gets dark. The fairy godmother had to choose who gets the happy ending. And based on her obsession with beauty, image, and control, Snow White is the obvious pick. She fits the perfect fairy tale mold. The other woman, the one who becomes the evil queen, doesn't. So what happens when someone is denied their perfect ending? They break. The theory suggests that by rejecting her, betraying her, or even manipulating her expectations, the fairy godmother created the evil queen. Not directly with magic, but by pushing her into jealousy, obsession, and rage. And we've already seen how her potions work. They don't just change appearances, they alter destinies. Promise someone everything, then take it away. And you don't just ruin their life, you turn them into a villain. Which means the fairy godmother isn't just controlling happy endings. She might be responsible for the bad ones too. Shrek never had a name. This theory takes a tiny moment from Shrek and turns it into something way more emotional. Early in the film, when Donkey asks Shrek his name, there's a brief pause. It's subtle, easy to miss, but it's there. And most people read it as
Yes.
Shrek just being socially awkward. But what if it's something deeper? If you look at Shrek's life, it's almost completely empty before Donkey shows up. No family, no friends, and no real connections. Just isolation. If he was abandoned or separated from other ogres at a young age, it's possible no one was ever around long enough to give him a name or even ask for one. And names matter. They're tied to identity, belonging, being seen. So the theory suggests that when Donkey asked that simple question, Shrek isn't hesitating because he's annoyed. He's hesitating because he's never really had to answer it before. Shrek might not even be something given to him. It could be something he came up with on the spot, or something he barely held onto from a distant memory, which makes that moment quietly powerful because Donkey doesn't just ask his name, he accepts it. No judgment, no fear, and no hesitation. And for someone who spent his entire life being rejected, that small interaction becomes the first step towards something Shrek never never really had before: an identity, a connection, and a beginning. Shrek is the last survivor. This theory takes the core theme of Shrek, fear and prejudice, and pushes it to its darkest possible conclusion. From the very beginning, we see how the world treats Shrek. Humans don't just avoid ogres, they hunt them, mock them, and treat them like monsters that shouldn't exist. Entire villages celebrate driving creatures like him out. So the question becomes, if the hatred is that strong, then why is Shrek the only ogre we see? The movie never explains it. It's easy to assume ogres are just solitary by nature, but that idea doesn't really hold up, especially when later films show that ogres can live in groups. So this theory suggests something much darker, that there were more ogres and they were wiped out. A massacre. Driven by fear, humans and other kingdoms could have hunted ogres down, seeing them as threats rather than people. And if Shrek was young when it happened, it would explain everything about who he becomes: his isolation, his trust issues, and his habit of pushing people away before they can hurt him. Because that's not just personality, that's trauma. It also reframes how he uses fear. Shrek leans into the ogres are terrifying stereotype, not because it's true, but because it protects him. If people are too scared to come close, they can't hurt him again. And that makes his relationship with Fiona and Donkey hit even harder. Because if this theory is true, Shrek didn't choose to be alone. He's just the last one left. That's 10 minutes. Thank you for watching. Like the video and don't forget to subscribe for more flops.
Okay, so I freaking enjoyed that video. Shout out to FlopGuy. I will definitely put his stuff in the descriptions so that you guys can check his channel out. I definitely agreed with most of the theories so far. I literally never thought about how Fiona survived. Like, I don't know why it never crossed my brain. Like, how did she eat? She was awake. It wasn't like she was asleep because literally she did that thing when she heard a voice. When Shrek came into the room, she tried to like act like she was Sleeping Beauty. And that's so funny because when I remember being a little girl and watching that movie and watching Shrek and watching the first one, and was like kind of like confused, and I was like, wait, is this Fiona or Sleeping Beauty? Sleeping Beauty was, she didn't get chosen. Um, but yeah, no, she tried to, fake sleep, and I feel like that's kind of a little bit relatable too. Like, you ever like try to fake sleep so you don't be bothered or so that no one knows that you're awake? Um, but yeah, I never really thought about how she ate, how she drank water, how she survived. Did she stay in that room the entire time? The entire time? And it was literally nothing much in that room. It was just a window, a bed, and a couple like I don't even think there was anything else. I think Ducky's story can be true. At first, I didn't really agree with it because I was just like, that's kind of a far fetch. But then I literally remembered like this movie is literally about different princess stories and different like characters from different folklores stories. Like they had three little pigs, and then they had the wolf. They had Pinocchio. Like they had all those things. So it makes sense that he could have been one of the donkeys from Pinocchio. Talk about how he was already a talking donkey. Like the old lady literally brought him in for money because he talked. And he didn't want to say nothing. And then magic, he ended up like getting like, bathed into some like I think it was like fairy dust. I don't know what it was. And he ended up flying and he ended up talking and then yeah. So that I think that does line up. The Puss in Boots theory, I did not really like that one because it didn't make it lose like it made sense because but also I'm trying to also refer back to Shrek 1 where they did not like magical characters. Like they were literally locking up anyone who like the humans was literally locking up any talking wolf, donkey, Pinocchio. They were really they literally was locking all of the fictional characters up. Literally, remember they put all those characters on Shrek's freaking lawn. Well, Donkey kind of invited them. But yeah, they literally was getting collected, and I feel like it wouldn't make sense for them to team up with Puss in Boots because he's literally a talking cat, a talking fighting cat. Them talking about how Shrek was kicked out of the ogre community. I think that could be possibly true too. Like he literally have trauma with his dad. It's very, very true. Like it can be true that his people put him out because he was different or like he just didn't fit in right. And honestly, I do like the comparison between like the ogres from Shrek 3, because that's the only time we really see other ogres, so I get why he like compared it. I feel like though they were really big and strong because they were in a war, and they literally were fighting Rumpelstiltskin and every all the bad guys and stuff. They were protecting themselves, so they kind of had to get. But then also that's in every timeline though, because Shrek was a target too. His fat ass didn't even get to the gym not once. Like I don't know. But like I'm just saying, like yeah, yeah, he probably just didn't want to be a part, and that could be also a thing. Like he probably ran away. Who knows? Because well, the reason why he was the way he was because he was used to being alone. So I can't really say that. Yeah, he don't really enjoy being alone for real. I've already kind of like nipped that in the butt in my last videos. But I really do enjoy the theories. But yeah, shout out to him. Subscribe to his channel. Check him out. Also subscribe to mine and like my video. And also comments. I really love to hear you guys' thoughts. Also follow my TikTok. I made a TikTok for this YouTube channel just so that you guys can get updates on my channel. Also, I'll be doing like little TikTok videos about the stuff that I may be talking about here. So you may be getting some stuff, some early releasing ideas. Yeah, that's it.